I still remember the moment my life, as I thought I knew it, crumbled. It wasn't dramatic in the way you'd imagine. No screaming, no shouting, just a few cold words delivered with surgical precision. I was standing in the middle of a bustling conference room in Berlin, halfway through presenting a groundbreaking deal that would secure my company's future. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I wasn't going to answer it, but something about the timing, or maybe it was intuition, made me step aside. "Hello?" I said, my voice calm, professional. "Michael." Mary's voice came through the line. It wasn't warm, as it usually was when I traveled. It was clipped, detached, like she was reading a prepared statement. "I'm leaving you." The words didn't register at first. I blinked, letting her continue, even as my stomach tightened. "I'm pregnant. It's Mark's child. I've sold the house and the car. Don't bother coming back." Just like that. No hesitation, no apology. My wife of 7 years, the woman I had built my life around, had casually dismantled our marriage like it was a bad contract. I felt my grip tighten on the phone. I should have been furious, or hurt, or humiliated. But in that moment, I felt nothing. My emotions didn't have time to catch up to the logic racing through my brain. "All right," I said, my voice steady. I could hear her surprise, the slight hitch in her breath. She had expected tears, anger, a fight. Instead, I gave her calm indifference. It wasn't because I didn't care. Oh, I cared. But I knew instinctively that any reaction would only feed her sense of triumph. There was a long pause. "That's it? Just all right?" she asked, almost annoyed. "That's it," I replied, then ended the call. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, walked back into the room, and finished my presentation without missing a beat. No one in that room knew my marriage had just ended, and honestly, I wasn't ready to process it either. The flight back to my hotel was a blur. My body was on autopilot, but my mind was already dissecting Mary's words. Pregnant? I hadn't even known we were trying for a child. Mark? Who the hell was Mark? And selling the house? The car? I'd have to verify everything, but it sounded like she had been planning this for months. I sat in my hotel room, staring out at the Berlin skyline. The anger was there, simmering just below the surface, but I refused to let it take over. Instead, I reached for my laptop and started making calls. If Mary thought she could blindside me, she clearly didn't know me as well as she thought. "Andrew," I said when my lawyer picked up, "I need you to freeze the sale of my house. Effective immediately." "Michael, what's going on?" he asked, his voice concerned. "My wife just informed me she's leaving me. Claims she sold the house and the car." Andrew was silent for a moment, likely processing the same implications I had. "We'll block any transactions on the house deed immediately. The car. Is it still leased in your name?" "Yes." "Good. She can't legally sell it without your consent. I'll take care of everything." I thanked him and hung up, moving to my next call. "Lisa," I said to my financial advisor, "I need you to freeze all joint accounts." She didn't ask questions, just confirmed it would be done. That's why I hired her. When the logistics were handled, I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath. The shock was still there, lurking beneath the surface, but something else was building alongside it. Determination. I wasn't going to let Mary destroy me. She thought she had the upper hand, that her betrayal would leave me floundering. But she underestimated me. For years, I had been a strategist in business, outmaneuvering competitors and negotiating deals that others thought impossible. Mary might have blindsided me emotionally, but strategically, she had just made her first move in a game she didn't even realize I was playing. I didn't react because I knew better. Reacting meant giving her control, and I wasn't about to do that. Instead, I would wait, plan, and strike when the time was right. She thought she had one, but this was just the beginning. The thing about betrayal is that it's never as simple as it looks on the surface. It isn't just the act itself. It's the planning, the lies, the manipulation that precedes it. Mary didn't just wake up one day and decide to leave me. She had been scheming, calculating, moving her pieces across the board while I was busy building a future for us. That was her first mistake, assuming I wasn't paying attention. Once the shock of her call wore off, I got to work. Anger would have been satisfying but pointless. begging her to reconsider? Out of the question. Instead, I focused on what I do best, strategy. The first step was information. I didn't know who Mark was, but I knew someone who could find out. I called David, a private investigator I'd worked with in the past. I need you to dig into someone for me, I told him. Mark, he's involved with my wife. David didn't need a backstory. He just asked for her phone number and any recent activity I could provide. It'll take me a couple of days, he said, and I hung up feeling the faint stirrings of control returning. Next, I turned my attention to the assets Mary claimed she'd already sold. The house was the obvious priority. If she had truly sold it, I would have seen legal paperwork cross my desk. But just to be sure, I called Andrew again. She can't sell it without my signature, right? Correct, he assured me. But she could list it. I'll check for any recent activity and flag it immediately. He called back within an hour. She listed the house last week at a price well below market value, probably to make a quick sale. But don't worry, it's blocked. The car was easier. It was leased under my name, which meant it couldn't legally change hands. Still, I contacted the dealership to confirm that no unauthorized actions had been taken. Everything was secure. The next step was financial. Lisa, my financial advisor, worked quickly to freeze our joint accounts. I made sure Mary would wake up the next day to find her access denied. No withdrawals, no transfers, no sudden shopping sprees. But here's the thing. I didn't want her to know right away. If she realized the accounts were frozen, she might suspect I was onto her. Instead, I asked Lisa to make the freeze look like a routine banking issue. A simple, technical glitch that wouldn't raise alarm bells. With my assets secured, I allowed myself a brief moment of satisfaction. Mary thought she had outmaneuvered me, but in reality, she was walking into a trap of her own making. That night, I sat in my hotel room, replaying the last few months in my mind. The missed dinners, the secretive texts, the sudden interest in expensive clothes and jewelry. I had ignored it all, chalking it up to stress or boredom. How naive. But here's the thing about betrayal. It reveals more about the betrayer than the betrayed. Mary thought she was clever, that I was too focused on my work to notice the cracks in our relationship. She didn't realize that I had spent years honing my instincts in boardrooms and negotiations. I could smell a lie a mile away. It just took me a little longer to notice when it was coming from my own wife. By the time I went to bed, I had the framework of a plan in place. The goal wasn't just to protect myself. It was to let Mary believe she had one. I wanted her to feel comfortable, confident, even triumphant. Because that's when people make mistakes. David called the next morning with his first update. Mark's a piece of work, he said. He's got a history of conning women out of money. A couple of them even filed police reports, but nothing stuck. He's good at disappearing when things go south. I smiled grimly. Mary had chosen poorly, but I wasn't about to warn her. Keep digging, I said. I want everything. Addresses, accounts, relationships, the works. David promised results, and I felt another piece of the puzzle click into place. The beauty of a well-executed plan is that it doesn't rely on rash decisions. It's deliberate, methodical, and devastating. Mary didn't know it yet, but she was playing a game she couldn't win. I allowed myself a moment of quiet satisfaction, staring out at the Berlin skyline. Mary thought she had stolen everything from me, but in reality, she had nothing. And when the time was right, I would show her just how wrong she was. Mary probably thought she had outsmarted me. I can imagine the smug satisfaction she must have felt, thinking she had everything wrapped up while I was thousands of miles away. She must have laughed to herself, imagining me walking into an empty house, confused and helpless. But what she didn't realize is that I had already laid the groundwork to dismantle her illusion piece by piece. While I was strategizing abroad, Mary was busy playing house with Mark, living in a fantasy world that would soon crumble beneath her. The first cracks began to show when she tried to access our joint account. I had deliberately orchestrated this moment. The accounts were frozen, but Lisa had flagged the freeze as a banking glitch. Mary likely called the bank, frustrated and impatient, only to be told that the issue was being resolved and she just needed to wait. I pictured her pacing the living room, perhaps with Mark lounging nearby, feeding her empty reassurances. Mark, of course, had no idea that his golden goose was about to run out of eggs. Meanwhile, Mary had listed the house for a quick sale. She had no idea the transaction had been blocked. Andrew informed me that she even found a buyer willing to pay cash. They'd likely agreed on a closing date, with Mary planning to pocket the money and make a fresh start. But when the paperwork stalled, she must have been confused. She probably assumed it was just a bureaucratic delay. I wondered if Mark started to get suspicious, but I doubted it. A man like him wasn't in this for the long haul. He was biding his time, waiting for the payout before moving on to his next target. While Mary and Mark reveled in their perceived victory, David, my private investigator, sent me daily updates. "Mark's getting comfortable," David told me during one of our calls. "He's been seen driving around in your car and spending time at your house. Seems like he thinks he's won the jackpot." "Let him think that," I replied. David also uncovered a string of exes Mark had conned over the years. One woman had lost her savings after Mark convinced her to invest in a fake business. Another had given him access to her credit cards, only to find herself drowning in debt when he disappeared. "He's good at what he does," David said. "So am I," I responded. While Mary played her games, I continued mine. I sent her a casual text. "Hope everything's going well at home. I'm wrapping up here and we'll be back soon." It was deliberately vague, designed to keep her guessing. She didn't reply, of course. I didn't expect her to, but I knew she'd read it and wonder what I knew, or what I was planning. A week later, David called with a significant update. "Mark's been using Mary's name to apply for loans," he said. "Small amounts, probably testing the waters to see how much he can get before she catches on." I let out a low laugh. "She won't catch on," I said. "She's too busy believing her own lies." But that wasn't all. David had uncovered another twist. Mark had been in contact with another woman, someone he'd been stringing along on the side. It was clear that Mark had no intention of sticking around once he'd milked Mary dry. "Send me everything," I told David. Meanwhile, Mary was busy throwing what she likely thought was her freedom party. I got wind of it through mutual acquaintances. She had invited friends over to celebrate her new life, parading Mark around like some kind of prize. "She's telling everyone you're the reason the marriage fell apart," one of my friends informed me. "Apparently, you were too focused on work, and she felt neglected." I wasn't surprised. Mary needed to play the victim to justify her actions. Let her. I didn't care what story she spun because I knew the truth, and so would everyone else when the time was right. As the days passed, I imagined Mary starting to feel the pressure. The house sale hadn't gone through. The bank glitch was unresolved. Mark was likely growing impatient, and her funds were dwindling. I allowed her to stew in the chaos, letting her think she was still in control. Every move I made was calculated to keep her in the dark until the moment of reckoning. Because while Mary thought she was living her best life, she was really living on borrowed time. And when that time ran out, she wouldn't know what hit her. It's ironic, really. While Mary and her lover were basking in their delusional triumph, I was halfway across the world, closing the kind of deal most people only dream about. The Berlin partnership had been months in the making, a high-stakes negotiation that required precision, patience, and no small amount of charm. In other words, exactly the kind of skills I needed to handle the situation back home. The deal wasn't just about money. It was about securing my legacy. This wasn't just a contract. It was a statement to the world and, perhaps more importantly, to myself. I wasn't a man who crumbled under pressure, and I certainly wasn't one to be outplayed. The final day of negotiations was intense. My team and I sat across from a group of stoic Germans, their expressions unreadable as we went over the finer points of the agreement. Despite the pressure, my focus didn't waver. If anything, the chaos in my personal life had sharpened my determination. I couldn't control Mary's actions, but this was mine to win. When the deal was finally signed, there was a moment of silence, followed by a handshake that seemed to last a lifetime. I smiled for the cameras, gave a brief interview, and then excused myself to return to my hotel. The moment I stepped into the elevator, I allowed myself a deep breath. The deal was done. My company was now poised for global expansion, and I had secured a future that no one, certainly not Mary, could take away from me. That evening, I treated myself to a quiet dinner. As I sipped my wine, My phone buzzed with updates from David, my private investigator. His findings were becoming more damning by the day. "Mark's up to his usual tricks," David reported. "He's been using Mary's credit to fund his lifestyle. Small purchases so far, but they're adding up." "Good," I said, swirling the wine in my glass. "Let him dig his own grave." David paused before adding, "And there's more. He's still in contact with another woman. Looks like he's setting up his next con." I laughed softly. "Of course he is. He's a parasite. It's only a matter of time before he moves on." But the most satisfying update was yet to come. David had uncovered a significant detail about the supposed sale of my house. Mary had gone as far as to forge my signature on some preliminary paperwork. It wasn't enough to make the sale official, but it was a blatant act of fraud. "She's getting desperate," David said. "Desperation makes people sloppy," I replied. "Let her keep digging that hole." Later that night, I called my lawyer, Andrew, to discuss the next steps. "How airtight is our case if we take this to court?" I asked. "Very," Andrew said confidently. "Between the block transactions, the forged paperwork, and the evidence of Mark's involvement, we could easily file for damages. Not to mention the reputational blow this would deal to Mary." "I don't want to file anything yet," I said. "Not until she realizes the full extent of her mistakes." "Understood," Andrew replied. "But when you're ready, we'll be prepared." Despite everything, I couldn't stop myself from wondering what Mary was thinking. Did she truly believe she'd gotten away with it? Was she lying awake at night, waiting for the other shoe to drop? Or was she still so confident in her victory that she hadn't even considered the possibility of failure? Part of me wanted to confront her, to lay all my cards on the table and watch her squirm. But I knew better. Timing was everything. If I revealed my hand too soon, she'd have time to regroup. No, it was better to let her feel secure, to let her dig herself deeper into the mess she'd created. The next morning, as I prepared to leave Berlin, I received a final update from Lisa, my financial advisor. "We've secured all your accounts," she said. "Even if she tries to access them through a loophole, she won't get a dime." "Good," I said. "And what about the joint investments?" "Frozen," she replied. "She can't touch them without your consent." "Perfect," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "Keep everything locked down. I want her to feel the full weight of her decisions." As my plane took off, I stared out the window at the sprawling city below. Berlin had been a success, both professionally and personally. I had proven to myself, and to Mary, though she didn't know it yet, that I was a man who thrived under pressure. I wasn't just surviving this betrayal, I was thriving because of it. When I landed back home, everything would be in place. Mary thought she had won, but she was about to learn that I don't lose. Not in business, not in life, and certainly not to someone like her. By now, Mary probably thought she was living her best life. I could almost see it. Her and Mark sitting in my house, sipping expensive wine she hadn't paid for, laughing at my supposed cluelessness. She was basking in the illusion that everything had gone according to her plan. But illusions have a way of shattering, and hers was about to come crashing down. It likely started small, almost unnoticeable. Mary's first real hint that something wasn't right would have been the banking issue. She'd wake up one morning, maybe a little hungover from another night of celebrating, and decide to withdraw cash for one of Mark's endless demands. Only, instead of the transaction going through, she'd see the words "insufficient funds" flash across the ATM screen. Her first reaction would have been confusion, maybe a little annoyance. She'd call the bank, and they'd tell her there was a temporary freeze on the account due to suspicious activity. Routine protocol, nothing to worry about. At least that's what they'd say. But that tiny seed of doubt would plant itself in her mind. I can picture her pacing the living room, phone in hand, trying to sound calm as she explained the situation to Mark. He wouldn't care about the details. He'd care about the money. Men like Mark always do. The next blow would come with the house. She must have felt smug when she listed it for a quick sale, thinking she'd bypass all the red tape by pricing it low. But then, out of nowhere, the paperwork stalled. Her real estate agent would call, apologetic but firm, explaining that there was a legal issue with the deed. "What legal issue?" she'd demand, her voice rising. "Well, The agent would say hesitantly, "It seems your husband hasn't signed off on the sale." Her stomach would drop. I know Mary well enough to guess how she'd react. First, she'd blame the agent for incompetence. Then she'd blame me, ranting about how I was trying to ruin her life. Finally, she'd realize that she was running out of options. Mark, meanwhile, wouldn't have the patience for any of this. Men like him are parasites. They thrive when the host is healthy and abandon it the moment it starts to weaken. He'd start pulling away, making excuses to leave the house or handle business. Mary would notice, of course, but she'd pretend not to. Desperation does strange things to people. I imagine Mary started trying to regain control, maybe by reaching out to old friends for financial help. But that's the thing about betrayal. It isolates you. Once people see what you're capable of, they start to distance themselves, unsure of when the knife might turn on them. I didn't have to imagine much, though, because David's updates painted a clear picture of her unraveling. "She's panicking," he told me during one of our calls. "I caught her on camera arguing with Mark outside your house. Looks like he's on his way out." "Good," I said. "Let him leave. It'll make the next part easier." "Do you want me to intervene?" David asked. "Not yet," I replied. "Let her keep digging. I want her to feel it completely." As the days passed, the cracks in Mary's world widened into chasms. She tried to withdraw money again, denied. She tried to contact the real estate agent about the house, stonewalled. Even her calls to Mark started going unanswered. The best part? She tried calling me 3 times. I let them all go to voicemail. Each time, her voice grew more frantic. "Michael, please call me back. I don't know what's going on, but we need to talk. Michael, I'm begging you. This is serious. I need your help. Michael, you can't just ignore me. This is your fault. Call me back." I didn't respond to any of them. Let her stew in the mess she created. The final straw came when David uncovered the truth about Mark's escape plan. "He's been withdrawing small amounts from Mary's personal account," David told me. "Looks like he's been funneling it to a separate account under a fake name." I laughed. Classic Mark. Any idea where he's headed? "South America. If the passport records are legit," David said. I nodded. "Let him go. He'll get what's coming to him eventually." When Mark finally disappeared, Mary was left alone in the ruins of her own making. She was broke, pregnant, and trapped in a house she couldn't sell. Her world, which had seemed so perfect just weeks ago, was now nothing more than a crumbling facade. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But the truth is, Mary's downfall wasn't an accident. It was the result of her own choices, her own greed, and her own betrayal. All I did was step aside and let her destroy herself. The flight back home felt surreal. As the plane descended, I wasn't just returning to the same city I'd left weeks earlier. I was stepping into a battleground. But the fight was over before it had even begun. I had won, and Mary didn't even know it yet. I kept my emotions in check as the flight attendants made their final announcements, though a faint smirk tugged at the corners of my lips. The stage was set, the players in place. All that remained was the final act. The moment I stepped into the terminal, I saw her. Mary. She was standing near the baggage claim, looking as though she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes wrinkled, and her expression, well, it was the kind of look that only comes from realizing your world is falling apart. I stopped in my tracks for a moment, letting the scene sink in. I didn't need to ask why she was there. She wasn't waiting to greet me out of love or regret. She was desperate. "Michael," she called, rushing toward me. Her voice was loud enough to turn a few heads, but I kept my pace steady. She reached me just as I set my carry-on down. Her eyes were wild, her hands trembling as she grabbed my arm. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice a mix of anger and panic. "Why is everything gone? The accounts, the house, the car. What did you do?" I tilted my head slightly, studying her as if she were a stranger. "What did I do?" I repeated, my tone cold. "Everything went just as I planned." Her mouth fell open, and for a moment, she was speechless. That didn't happen often with Mary. She tried to recover, stammering something about the house sale and the bank. You sabotaged everything. You froze the accounts, blocked the sale, Why would you do this to me? Why? I asked, my voice steady. Because you tried to destroy me, Mary. You lied, you schemed, and you thought I'd just roll over and let you take everything. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You thought I was a fool, that I wouldn't see through you. But here's the thing, Mary. I've been playing this game longer than you have, and I don't lose. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I'd once loved, but it wasn't enough to sway me. Michael, please, she said, her voice cracking. I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. Mark, he manipulated me. I raised an eyebrow. Mark manipulated you? Is that what you're telling yourself now? She nodded desperately, as if clinging to the idea that I might still believe her. He lied to me, Michael. He promised me things, but he's gone now. I realize how wrong I was. Please, just give me another chance. I let out a bitter laugh. Another chance? Mary, you didn't just make a mistake. You made a choice. A deliberate, calculated choice to betray me. You sold the house, you drained the accounts, and you flaunted your affair in my face. Now, you want me to forget all of that because Mark left you high and dry? She flinched at my words, but I didn't stop. I warned you once, Mary. I told you not to underestimate me, but you didn't listen. And now, you're reaping what you sowed. She dropped to her knees right there in the middle of the terminal. Please, she begged, tears streaming down her face. I have nothing left. I need you. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of something. Pity, maybe, but it was fleeting. You need me? I said, crouching down to meet her gaze. Where was that sentiment when you called me and told me you were leaving? When you sold our house out from under me? When you lied about being pregnant with another man's child? Her sobs grew louder, drawing more attention from passers-by. I stood up, unwilling to let her drag me into her performance. You made your choices, Mary, I said, my voice firm. Now, you have to live with them. I grabbed my carry-on and started to walk away. She called after me, her voice hoarse and pleading. Michael, please, don't leave me like this. I paused for a moment, glancing over my shoulder. You left me first, Mary. Remember that. And with that, I walked out of the terminal, leaving her behind in the chaos she had created. The ride home was quiet, my thoughts a mix of satisfaction and resolve. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. Mary had tried to break me, but she'd only made me stronger. As I pulled into the driveway of my new apartment, a sleek, modern space I'd secured while still abroad, I felt a sense of peace. Mary's chapter in my life was over, and the next one was just beginning. 2 days after the airport scene, Mary called me again. Not that I had expected her to stop. Her messages had gone from frantic, pleading to indignant rage, all sprinkled with a dose of self-pity. I ignored every single one. Then, she sent a text. We need to talk. Please. Just one meeting. I thought about ignoring her again, but something in me wanted closure. Maybe it was curiosity. What excuse would she conjure up now? Or maybe, I just wanted to see how far she'd fallen. Whatever the reason, I agreed. We met at a small cafe downtown. I chose the location deliberately, neutral ground where she couldn't cause a scene. I arrived first, ordered a black coffee, and waited. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. The confident, poised Mary the first once knew was gone. She looked disheveled, her face pale and her eyes red-rimmed, likely from sleepless nights and endless crying. Michael, she said, her voice trembling as she sat down. I nodded curtly, leaning back in my chair. Mary. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She fidgeted with her hands, avoiding my gaze. I let the silence stretch, watching her squirm. Finally, she blurted out, I'm sorry. I raised an eyebrow. For what, exactly? For everything, she said quickly. For lying to you, for hurting you, she choked on her words, tears welling in her eyes. For betraying you. I sipped my coffee, letting her words hang in the air. Go on, I said. She took a shaky breath. I don't know what I was thinking. Mark, he seemed so different at first. He promised me things, adventure, freedom, a life I thought I wanted. But it was all lies. He used me, Michael. He took everything and left me with nothing. I let out a low laugh, shaking my head. You expect me to believe that Mark manipulated you? That you had no part in this? Her face crumpled. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You just what? I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. You just decided to sell our house without my knowledge? To drain our accounts? To flaunt your affair while I was halfway across the world, working to build a future for us? Tell me, Mary, which part of that wasn't your choice? She flinched at my words, her tears spilling over. I was selfish, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I wanted something different, but I didn't realize what I was throwing away. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. And now you realize? She nodded, looking at me with those same pleading eyes she used when she wanted to get her way. Please, Michael. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I'll make it up to you, I swear. I stared at her for a long moment, weighing my next words. Then, I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila folder, sliding it across the table. What's this? She asked, hesitating. Proof, I said simply. Proof that you didn't just betray me. You destroyed yourself in the process. She opened the folder, her hands trembling as she flipped through the documents. Bank statements showing her unauthorized withdrawals. The fake signatures she used to try to sell the house. Photos of Mark with another woman, his next target. Her face went pale as she read the final document. A court motion prepared by my lawyer, Andrew. This is... She looked up at me, her voice cracking. You're filing charges? I shrugged. Not yet. That depends on you. Her tears started again, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Michael, please don't do this. I've already lost everything. I can't lose more. You lost everything the moment you betrayed me, I said coldly. I'm giving you a chance to walk away without legal consequences. But make no mistake, Mary, this is the last chance you'll ever get from me. She nodded quickly, clutching the folder like it was a lifeline. I'll do whatever you want. I'll leave. I'll stay out of your life. Just don't take this to court. I stood, grabbing my coffee. You'll leave the house immediately, I said. Andrew will be in touch to ensure a clean separation. If you so much as try to contact me again, the motion gets filed. She opened her mouth to argue, but thought better of it, nodding instead. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The confrontation hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. Mary's tears, her apologies, they didn't matter. What mattered was that I was finally free of her. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. The woman I had once loved was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. And as I stepped into the bright sunlight, I realized I didn't need her, or anyone else, to define my happiness. Walking out of that cafe marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. For weeks, I had lived under the shadow of betrayal, anger, and resentment. But as the door swung shut behind me, I felt a strange calm wash over me. I wasn't just walking away from Mary. I was walking toward the life I deserved. The first step was reclaiming my space. I had no desire to return to the house we once shared. That place was tainted by her lies, her schemes, and the memories of a love that had been nothing more than an illusion. Instead, I moved into a sleek, modern penthouse downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, a constant reminder of the heights I had climbed despite everything. Those first few weeks alone were a mix of reflection and rebuilding. I filled my new home with things that brought me peace, a wall of books, abstract art, and a minimalist design that mirrored the clarity I was finally beginning to feel. It wasn't about material possessions. It was about creating a space that felt like mine, free from the shadows of the past. My work became my sanctuary. The Berlin deal had catapulted my company into the international market, and I threw myself into expanding the business. Long hours at the office were no longer a burden. They were a blessing. Every contract I signed, every successful project I launched, felt like another brick in the fortress I was building around my life. But it wasn't just about work. For the first time in years, I made time for myself. I started running in the mornings, letting the rhythm of my footsteps clear my mind. I picked up hobbies I'd neglected during my marriage, playing the piano, learning to cook, even taking up photography. Each new skill, each moment of quiet accomplishment, was a reminder that I was more than the man Mary had tried to destroy. Of course, there were moments when the past tried to creep back in. Mutual friends would call, hesitating before asking, "Have you heard from Mary?" I always gave the same answer, "No, and I don't plan to." Her name no longer triggered anger or sadness. It was just a name now, tied to a chapter of my life that had ended. The real turning point came at a company gala. It was a black tie event, the kind of evening where everyone sipped champagne and exchanged polite conversations. Normally, I would have kept my distance, preferring to stay on the sidelines. But this time, I felt different, lighter, freer. That's where I met Claire. She wasn't like Mary. Where Mary had been all about appearances, Claire was genuine, grounded. We started talking by chance, bonding over a shared love of literature. She was a writer, passionate about storytelling, and as the night went on, I found myself captivated by her authenticity. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of something I thought I'd lost. Over the next few months, Claire and I grew closer. We took things slow, both of us wary of rushing into anything. She knew about my past. Well, the parts one was willing to share, and she never judged or pried. Instead, she encouraged me to focus on the future, reminding me that life was too short to dwell on what couldn't be changed. With her, I discovered a different kind of happiness. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and real. Meanwhile, Mary's absence was barely noticeable. The separation agreement was finalized without incident, and Andrew informed me that she had moved to a small apartment on the outskirts of town. According to David, Mark had never returned, and Mary was now struggling to make ends meet. I could have felt vindicated, maybe even smug, but honestly, I didn't feel much of anything. Her downfall wasn't my concern anymore. My focus was on building a life that didn't include her, or the chaos she brought with her. Looking back, I realized that Mary's betrayal, as painful as it had been, was the best thing that could have happened to me. It forced me to confront the cracks in our marriage, to reevaluate what I wanted out of life, and to rediscover the strength I had forgotten I possessed. Now, standing on the balcony of my penthouse, a glass of whiskey in hand, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The city lights stretched out before me, a testament to the endless possibilities that lay ahead. This was my new beginning, and for the first time, I was ready to embrace it. Mary's life unraveled like a thread caught in a storm. After our final meeting at the cafe, she disappeared from my radar. I didn't seek out updates, but they found me anyway. Whispers through mutual friends, occasional reports from David, and the stray rumors that always circulate in social circles. The picture they painted was grim, but not unexpected. Mary moved into a cramped apartment on the outskirts of town, far from the life of luxury she had once enjoyed. With no Mark, no house, and no access to the accounts she tried to drain, she was left scraping by on odd jobs. The glow of her socialite life had dimmed, replaced by the harsh realities of her new circumstances. But her troubles didn't end there. One day, David called me with an update that caught even me off guard. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Mary's being sued by one of Mark's other victims. Turns out he used her name to secure a loan, and now the creditors are coming after her." I chuckled, shaking my head. I guess karma works faster than I thought. David hesitated. "Do you want me to intervene?" "No," I said firmly. "She made her bed. Let her lie in it." As much as I wanted to let go, a small part of me wondered if Mary truly understood the depth of her betrayal. Not just to me, but to herself. She had destroyed her own life in pursuit of something that never existed. And now, she was paying the price. Months passed, and I began to notice a shift in how people spoke about me. At first, there had been pity, sympathy for the man whose wife had betrayed him. But now, there was respect. My name carried weight, not just because of my professional success, but because of how I had handled everything. I hadn't crumbled. I hadn't lashed out. I had simply moved forward, leaving the wreckage behind me. That respect came to a head at a company gala. It was one of those glittering events where everyone wanted to be seen, and I was no exception. But this time, I wasn't alone. Claire was by my side. Her presence a quiet testament to the new chapter one was building. As we mingled with guests, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. A year ago, I had been a man blindsided by betrayal, scrambling to protect what I had built. Now, I was stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Mary, meanwhile, had faded into the background. The last I heard, she was working at a small boutique, trying to stay afloat. She had written me a letter, a long, rambling apology that alternated between regret and justification. "I made mistakes," she wrote. "I know I hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself for what I did. But I was lost, Michael. I didn't know what I wanted, and I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." I read the letter once, then tucked it away in a drawer. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The night of the gala ended with Claire and me standing on my penthouse balcony, the city lights stretching out before us. She leaned against the railing, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the skyline. "You've been quiet," she said, turning to look at me. "Just thinking," I replied. "About her?" I shook my head. "No, about everything. About how much can change in a year." She smiled, reaching for my hand. "Well, here's to change." I raised my glass, clinking it against hers. "To change," I said. As I stood there, I realized something important. Mary's betrayal hadn't broken me. It had freed me. It had forced me to confront the cracks in my life and rebuild something stronger. It had taught me the value of loyalty, the importance of resilience, and the power of letting go. I didn't need revenge or validation. I didn't need her regret or her apologies. All I needed was the future I was creating for myself. A future filled with possibilities, untainted by the mistakes of the past. This was my triumphant end. Not because I had one, but because I had moved on. And for the first time in a long time, I was truly happy.